clarify something. See if I got this right, Dick. 21% of the drugs are coming across non-ports of entry. Is that right?
There's seizures by the U.S. Border Patrol crossing between ports.
If you want to fight the drug problem, you need the technology and the stuff that Senator Durbin was talking about. Is that right?
We need technology at the ports, and we need barrier technology and agents between ports. We need both.
87% of the people coming here legally come across non-ports of entry, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Senator Harris, I'm sorry, apologize.
Thank you.
Apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner McAleenan, would you agree that the vast majority of parents, wherever they are born, have a natural desire to protect their children, whatever it takes?
Certainly.
Okay. In January, the Department of Defense extended the deployment of active duty troops at our southern border for an additional 8 months in response to a DHS request. Despite multiple requests from my Office of DOD and DHS, we have not received an intelligence-based assessment demonstrating a national security threat to our southern border. Were you involved in developing the assessment and the threat assessment that DHS provided to DOD to justify the deployment of these troops?
So the specific requests for assistance made to DOD for the operational support they're providing, they are generated by CBP and our operational.
Were you involved in the assessment?
I would approve those requests, correct.
And do you have a copy of your assessment that contributed to the decision to send more troops to the border?
I'd be happy to give you our request for assistance and explain the rationale.
Please do. And can you do that by the end of next week?
Sure.
Thank you. Last week, the Justice Department reported that the Office of Refugee Resettlement received 4,556 allegations of sexual abuse or harassment of immigrant children in their custody between October of 2014 and July of 2018. 178 of these allegations were against staff of shelters where the children were placed, including fondling and kissing and watching them shower and rape. Justice Department data shows that at the peak of the family separation crisis last spring and summer, sexual abuse allegations in shelters skyrocketed. Obviously, this is unacceptable. It's abhorrent, and we should all be very deeply concerned. So I understand that HHS personnel, of course, do not fall under your direct authority, but your agency is nonetheless handing over these children to HHS. So my question is, were you aware of these reports of sexual abuse?
I did see the recent reports, obviously something we take very seriously in our own custody.
Were you aware of the reports before it was published last week?
No, I was not.
You had no sense that this was going on?
I certainly not aware of those numbers or that level of information.
Were you aware of any allegations that while the children you handed over to ORR, that they had been abused?
No, actually, I was not aware of any specific allegations that I can recall. In my experience, the HHS ORR professionals are very committed to children, and the grants they administer do a very good job of protecting children as they place them with sponsors.
Do you have any concern that now that you know that over 4,000 allegations occurred within 4 years, that perhaps that's not the case?
I defer to my colleagues at HHS to answer that question.
And moving forward, what can you do to ensure that the children that you transfer to ORR will be safe, now that you do know this information?
So I believe that's a better question for HHS and Secretary Azar or Assistant Secretary Johnson.
Do you believe that you have any duty or that your agency has any duty to ensure that when you transfer these children to the custody of another agency that they will be safe?
I'm mandated by law to transfer these children. I don't have an ability to question that.
So you don't believe that you have a duty to determine that upon transfer of these children that they will be safe?
I'm required by statute to transfer these children to HHS within 72 hours.
Do you believe that you have any duty to raise a flag of concern that when you transfer these children to another agency that they may not be safe?
I believe that's the duty of the management and leadership of Health and Human Services, their Inspector General, or the White House, or Congress, not mine.
Okay. The New York Times recently published a report that there was an investigation into incidents of sexual violence along the southern border over the past 2 decades. The investigation found that there were 100 documented cases of immigrant women being sexually assaulted along the border, often after they had reached the United States. According to the report, at least 5 of these women were assaulted by on-duty CBP officers. Has CBP conducted an investigation into these alleged sexual assaults?
Yes.
And what is the result of the investigations?
We could bring you a briefing on each case that we've explored. Obviously, the DHS IG or sometimes state and local law enforcement will have the lead of those investigations. But I can tell you that it's unacceptable in any degree in our ranks. It needs to be followed up on and held accountable. And those 5 cases are very concerning.
Can you please give my office the result of those investigations by the end of next week?
Sure.
Were any of those cases referred for criminal prosecution?
I believe several of them were, yes.
And what, if any, duty does CBP have, and in particular CBP personnel, what, if any, duty do they have to report any suspicions that they may have of sexual abuse being committed by their colleagues?
It's mandatory by policy.
Can you give me a copy of that policy, please?
Yes.
Legal declarations filed on behalf of immigrant children described freezing temperatures, limited access to food and water, and verbal and physical assault at CBP facilities. My staff visited the El Centro Border Patrol Station in January, and officials there told them that there is a policy of taking away all toys from children, and that happens upon their arrival, which means, of course, that when the children are in custody at this station, they have no access to toys, books, or any other means of mental stimulation. Is this policy unique to El Centro, or is this happening in other detention facilities as well?
So all of our policies are nationally consistent. We have what's called the Transportation Escort Detention Standards that is overseen by our own internal Office of Professional Responsibility, but also the Inspector General, Civil Rights and Civil Liberty at
So is it the
DHS.
policy of every station then to remove toys and books and other toys from the children when they arrive? And if so, are you then replacing them with other books and toys and things of that nature?
So we're trying to provide the most appropriate custodial setting for the brief period that children are with us, and it's got to be safe. That's the primary consideration.
Do you believe that the children having toys would create an unsafe condition?
It depends on the toys.
It depends on the toys. Can you give examples of toys that would create an
discretionary
unsafe condition for the children?
Sure. We could go to the Consumer Product Safety Commission website and list all the types of toys that are legal in other countries that are not allowed here that could be dangerous to children if they arrive with them. But that's something we need to do carefully.
I have no further questions. Thank you.